Captain Maya Torres stood in the great hall of the Galactic Council and felt her anger growing stronger with each passing moment. The alien beings around her spoke in voices that sounded like metal, scraping against stone or water flowing through pipes or wind howling through empty spaces. They did not care what she had to say. They had already decided what would happen to humanity. The Zekthari ambassador moved forward on his 6 legs and his many eyes focused on Maya with something that looked like disgust. He spoke, and his words came out harsh and cold. Humanity would accept new rules or face consequences. Human ships would be inspected whenever the Council wanted. Human children would be registered in Council databases. Human colonies would be placed under alien supervision. Maya felt her hands forming into fists at her sides. For 3 years, she had tried to make peace work. For 3 years, she had listened to demands and insults and threats. She had smiled when aliens mocked human culture. She had stayed quiet when they called humans primitive and dangerous. She had accepted smaller losses, hoping to avoid bigger ones. But this was too much. The Council wanted to control everything about humanity. They wanted to decide where humans could live, and how many children they could have, and what technology they could use. They spoke about safety and order and the good of the galaxy, but Maya knew the truth. They were afraid of what humanity might become if left free. The Vornash delegate made a sound like laughter. It said that young species always thought they were special. It said that humanity would learn to obey, just like all the others had learned. Maya reached into her jacket pocket. Her fingers closed around the small data chip she had been carrying for weeks. The chip that contained orders from Earth. Orders she had hoped she would never need to use. She pulled out the chip and held it up high where all the delegates could see it. The chamber grew quiet. Maya spoke, and her voice carried across the vast space. She told them that humanity was done talking, done begging, done pretending that this was a partnership between equals. All human ambassadors were leaving. All trade agreements were ending. All military treaties were canceled. Every council ship had 3 days to leave human space. The silence that followed felt heavy and dangerous. Then the aliens began to speak all at once. Some sounded angry. Others sounded shocked. A few even sounded scared. The Zekthari ambassador made a hissing noise that Maya had learned meant extreme displeasure. He told her that humanity was making a terrible mistake. He said that without council protection, humans would be destroyed by pirates and criminals and hostile species. He said that humanity would come crawling back within months. Maya smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She told him that humans would take their chances. She told him that humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and wars before they ever reached the stars. She told him that if the Council wanted to see humans beg, then they would be waiting a very long time. Then she said something that made the entire chamber go completely silent. She said that if the Council tried to force humanity to obey, then humanity would fight. And if humanity had to fight, then they would make the entire galaxy burn. The Vornash delegate flickered with what might have been amusement or anger. It said that humanity could not win a war against the Council. It said that the Council had thousands of worlds and millions of ships. It said that humanity was nothing but a small species making big threats. Maya turned to leave. Her team of human diplomats followed behind her. At the doorway, she stopped and looked back. She spoke one last time. She told them that humans had a saying from old Earth. She told them never to corner a predator that has nothing left to lose. She told them that they had been warned. The doors closed behind the humans with a sound like thunder. Maya walked through the corridors of the council station with her head held high. Inside, she was terrified. Earth had fewer than 30 colonies. The human fleet numbered less than 300 ships. Against the council forces, humanity was hopelessly outnumbered. But humans had something the council had forgotten about. They had the willingness to do whatever it took to stay free. far away from the council chambers, in a place where ancient trees grew tall and strong, an elven woman named Lyra opened her eyes. She had been meditating under the largest tree in the forest when the news reached her. Not through technology, but through older methods, the solar wands carried whispers across space. The quantum foam held echoes of important events. Lyra had learned long ago how to listen to these whispers and echoes. She stood up, and her movements were graceful and perfect. She had lived for more than 3,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a beach. She had watched the council form from noble intentions and become something cold and cruel. Beside her, a massive shape stirred. Scales darker than midnight caught the light of the twin suns, a head larger than a human vehicle lifted from the ground, eyes that glowed like hot coals focused on Lyra Ashkar. The dragon spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. He asked if the humans had finally made their choice. Lyra nodded slowly. She told him that humanity had walked away from the council. She told him that war was coming. Ashkar stretched his wings, and the movement created wind strong enough to bend the trees. Each wing was longer than a human building was tall. His body was covered in scales that could stop any weapon the council possessed. He was old, even by dragon standards. He had been alive when the first spacefaring species took their first steps beyond their home worlds. He asked Lyra if humanity would survive what was coming. Lyra did not answer right away. She walked to the edge of the grove where she could see the sky. The stars were just beginning to appear as the sun set. She thought about what she knew of humanity. They were young as species go. Barely 1,000 years since they discovered fire. Barely 100 years since they reached their own moon. Barely 50 years since they made first contact with alien life. But in that short time, they had shown something remarkable. They adapted faster than any species she had ever seen. They took ideas from others and made them better. They looked at problems that seemed impossible and found solutions anyway. Most importantly, they refused to give up even when giving up made sense. Lyra smiled and told Ashkar that humanity would not just survive. They would change everything. The dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh. He asked her if she planned to help them. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. 3,000 years ago, she had helped create the Galactic Council. She had believed in the dream of different species working together in peace. She had written parts of the original laws that governed how species should treat each other, but the Council had betrayed that dream. It had become exactly what it was supposed to prevent, a tyranny that crushed anyone who refused to obey. The Council had even tried to register and control all dragon-bonded individuals. They had declared dragons dangerous and unpredictable. They had hunted Lyra and others like her. They had killed most of the bonded pairs. Only 7 remained, including Lyra and Ashkar. Lyra finally spoke. She told the Ancient Dragon that yes, she would help humanity. Not because humans were perfect, not because they were innocent, but because they were fighting for the right to choose their own path, and that was worth protecting. Ashkar asked what would happen if humanity won. Lyra looked up at her ancient companion. She told him honestly that she did not know humanity might become heroes, or they might become monsters. They might build something better than the Council, or they might create something worse, but at least they would have the chance to choose. Ashkar lowered his great head until it was level with Lyra. He told her that the Council would hunt them again when they discovered her involvement. He told her that helping humanity meant becoming enemies of the most powerful organization in the galaxy. He asked if she was ready for that. Lyra reached up and placed her hand against the dragon's massive jaw. She told him that she had been hiding for 3,000 years. She told him that she was tired of watching from the shadows. She told him that it was time to remind the galaxy what dragon-bonded pairs could do. The dragon rumbled with approval. Together they looked up at the stars, where somewhere human ships were preparing for war, where council fleets were gathering to crush the rebellion. Where the fate of the galaxy hung in balance, Lyra knew that the coming days would be filled with violence and death. She knew that millions might die before this was over. She knew that she was choosing a side in a conflict that could reshape everything. But she also knew that some things were worth fighting for. Freedom was one of those things. The right to exist without permission was one of those things. The chance to prove that young species could stand equal with old ones was one of those things. She told Ashkar to prepare their ship. She told him they had a journey to make. She told him it was time to meet the humans and see if they were truly worthy of the help she planned to offer. The dragon spread his wings and launched into the sky. Lyra watched him climb higher and higher until he was just a dark shape against the stars. Then she turned back to the forest. She had preparations to make. Knowledge to gather old weapons to wake from their long sleep. The galaxy thought it knew what was coming. It thought this would be a simple war where the strong crushed the weak. But the galaxy was about to learn that nothing involving humanity was ever simple, and nothing involving dragon-bonded pairs was ever predictable. Lyra smiled to herself as she walked back into the forest. The game was beginning, and after 3,000 years of waiting, she was finally ready to play. The council chambers erupted in chaos after the humans left. Delegates from hundreds of species argued and shouted and demanded action. Some wanted immediate military response, others urged caution. A few quietly wondered if humanity had a point. But the council leadership had already made their decision. Humanity would be taught a lesson that would echo through the galaxy for generations. 3 fleets were ordered to advance into human territory. 200 ships in each fleet, the finest vessels the council possessed. Crews trained for decades in the art of warfare. Commanders who had never known defeat. They would show humanity what happened to species who defied the council. Meanwhile, in human space, everything was moving with desperate speed. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center of Bastion Prime. The massive space station hung at the edge of human territory like a fortress guarding a gate. Around her, officers worked at their stations with focused intensity. Screens showed human colonies evacuating ships moving supplies and people to safer locations. Defense platforms being activated after years of standby mode. Kate had been in the military for 30 years. She had seen combat against pirates and criminals. She had commanded ships in dangerous situations, but she had never faced anything like this. The council fleets coming toward them represented more firepower than humanity had ever encountered. On paper, the battle was already lost. Kate looked at the tactical display showing council fleet movements. They were advancing slowly and carefully. They expected resistance. They expected humanity to defend their colonies with everything they had. They expected a conventional war. Kate smiled grimly. Humanity was about to show them that humans did not fight conventional wars. Commander Lisa Grant approached with a data pad. She reported that the evacuation of refugee colony was complete. 40,000 people moved to safer systems. The colony itself was rigged and ready. Kate nodded and gave the order to proceed to the next phase. Lisa hesitated before asking if they were really going to do this. Destroy an entire colony just to make a statement. Kate turned to face her second in command. She spoke quietly, so only Lisa could hear. She said that humanity was fighting for survival, that the council would not stop with 1 colony or 2 or 10, that if humans did not show the council they were willing to pay any price, then the war would be over before it began. Lisa looked troubled, but she saluted and moved to carry out her orders. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Colonies being evacuated, worlds being abandoned, resources being moved, ships being prepared. Director Amy Foster worked in a secret facility buried inside an asteroid. Around her, scientists and engineers labored on projects that had been theoretical until 2 weeks ago. Projects with names like Ragnarok and Nemesis. Projects that combined human innovation with technologies that should not exist. Amy had been told that they had 3 months to make miracles happen. She was going to do it in 6 weeks. On the forest world of Talvendis, Lyra prepared her ship for departure. The Whisper of Stars was a vessel, older than most civilizations. It could slip through space without being detected. It could survive weapons that would destroy normal ships. It had carried Lyra across the galaxy for thousands of years. Oshkar, in his smaller form, walked beside her through the ship. He asked where they were going first. Lyra told him they would go to the human frontier, to the place where the Council and humanity would first clash. She wanted to see how humans fought when their backs were against the wall. She wanted to know if they deserved the help she planned to offer. The dragon asked what would convince her. Lyra thought about that question. She told him she would know it when she saw it. They launched from Talvendis without ceremony. The ship rose through the atmosphere and slipped into hyperspace. Behind them, the forest world continued its slow turn under the twin suns. Ahead of them, the galaxy prepared for war. The first Council fleet reached Refuge Colony exactly 14 days after humanity withdrew from the Council. Fleet Commander Zakresh studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The human colony lay before them. Its shields were active but weak. Its defenses were minimal. His fleet could destroy it in hours. He opened a communication channel and demanded that the colony surrender. There was no response. He tried again with the same result. Zakresh ordered his ships into attack formation. They would bombard the colony until the humans begged for mercy. Then the shields around the colony flickered and died. Zakresh's tactical officer reported that the colony was shutting down all systems. They appeared to be surrendering. Zakresh allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He told his crew to prepare occupation forces, show mercy to humans who cooperated, make examples of those who resisted. This would be over quickly. Then every sensor on every ship began screaming warnings. The colony was not shutting down. It was overloading. Every power plant and generator and reactor was going critical simultaneously. Zakresh had exactly 3 seconds to realize what was happening. The colony exploded with the force of a small star. The blast was shaped and directed, thousands of charges placed perfectly over weeks of preparation. The shockwave hit the Council fleet like a hammer. Ships tumbled through space. Shields overloaded and collapsed. Smaller vessels simply ceased to exist. The flagship survived, but barely hull breaches on every deck, systems failing throughout the ship. Half the crew dead or dying. Zakresh pulled himself up from the deck. Green blood leaked from wounds across his body. His tactical officer gave the casualty report with a voice numb from shock. 70% of the fleet destroyed or disabled, 140 ships gone in an instant. Then the communication systems activated. Captain Maya Torres appeared on every screen in every surviving Council ship. Her face was cold and hard. She told them that this was lesson 1, that humanity would defend every meter of their space, that humans would sacrifice anything to stay free, that the Council should leave while they still could. The transmission ended. Zakresh stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he gave the order that would haunt him forever. He told his fleet to retreat. News of the disaster spread across the galaxy within hours. The Council tried to control the narrative. They said it was a minor setback. They said the humans had used cowardly tactics. They said the next attack would succeed, but everyone who saw the footage understood the truth. Humanity had destroyed one of their own colonies, evacuated 40,000 people just to spring a trap, sacrificed an entire world to make a point. What kind of species did that? What kind of species was willing to burn everything they had built rather than surrender? Lyra watched the battle footage from her ship. Ashkar, in his smaller form, sat beside her. The dragon asked if she had expected this. Lyra shook her head slowly. She told him that she had expected humans to fight. She had expected them to be clever and desperate, but this level of ruthlessness surprised even her. Ashkar asked if it changed her mind about helping them. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said no. She said that humanity was doing what they had to do, that war was never clean or fair or kind, that species who wanted to survive could not afford mercy until after they had won. She told Ashkar to set course for Bastion Prime. It was time to meet the humans face to face. The council leadership met in emergency session. The chamber that was usually filled with calm deliberation now echoed with angry voices. The Zekthari ambassador demanded immediate retaliation. The Vornash delegate argued for economic sanctions. Others suggested negotiation. The council leader called for silence. She was a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form. She had led the council for 500 years. She told the assembled delegates that humanity had to be crushed completely, that they could not allow this rebellion to inspire other species, that the full might of the council would be brought to bear. 6 grand fleets were ordered to assemble over 6,000 ships, the largest military force in galactic history. They would advance into human space from multiple directions. They would overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. They would capture Earth itself and install a council government. Humanity would learn that defiance had consequences. Deep in human space, Admiral Kate Morrison received reports of the council buildup. She studied the numbers with a growing sense of dread. Even with the victory at Refuge, the mathematics were brutal. Humanity simply did not have enough ships to face 6,000 council vessels. Lisa Grant stood beside her and asked what they would do. Kate pulled up a star chart showing human territory. She pointed to each colony and outpost. She said they would abandon them all. Every human would fall back to core systems. They would make the council chase them across empty space. They would turn every asteroid field into a trap. They would make the council pay for every light year of advance. And while the council was chasing shadows, Amy Foster's team would finish the special projects, ships that would change everything, weapons that would terrify the galaxy. Lisa asked if it would be enough. Kate admitted honestly that she did not know, but she said that humanity would find out together because they were all in this now. Every human alive had a stake in what happened next. In a secret research facility, Amy Foster watched her teams work around the clock. The framework of the first Ragnarok-class ship was taking shape. It was enormous. 10 kilometers long, more factory than warship, more fortress than vehicle. It would take conventional shipyards years to build something this size. Amy had 6 weeks, but she had something conventional. Shipyards did not have. She had human desperation. She had volunteers working until they collapsed from exhaustion. She had engineers solving impossible problems through sheer stubbornness. She had scientists combining technologies in ways that should not work but somehow did. The ship was coming together faster than anyone had believed possible. Amy allowed herself a small smile. The council thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lyra brought the whisper of stars out of hyperspace near Bastion Prime. Immediately, human defense systems locked onto her ship. Weapons platforms powered up fighter squadrons launched. A human voice came over the communication system demanding identification. Lyra responded calmly. She said her name and that she wished to speak with human leadership. There was a long pause. Then Commander Lisa Grant appeared on screen. She looked suspicious but curious. She asked why an unknown alien ship wanted to speak with human commanders. Lyra smiled slightly. She told Lisa that she had information that might help humanity survive the coming war. She told her that she had technologies the Council feared. She told her that she was a friend. Lisa studied Lyra for a long moment. Then she uploaded coordinates for a meeting site, a small, uninhabited moon. "Come alone," she said. Lyra agreed. Though she mentioned that she never went anywhere alone, the human commander would understand when they met. The shuttle descended toward the moon's surface. Ashkar flew alongside in his true form, massive wings beating scales gleaming in the light of the nearby star. On the surface, a human shuttle was already waiting. Admiral Kate Morrison emerged with 2 soldiers in armor. She looked up at Ashkar, and her expression showed shock. "That is a dragon." Kate said. Lyra smiled and replied that humans were very observant. Kate recovered quickly and asked what Lyra wanted. Lyra told her about the council, about how it had started with noble goals and become corrupt, about how it hunted anyone who refused to obey, about how it had nearly exterminated all dragon-bonded pairs. She told Kate that she had lived for 3,000 years, that she had knowledge and technology that could help humanity, that she wanted to see the council broken. Kate asked what Lyra wanted in return. Lyra said she wanted humanity to remember that not all aliens were enemies, that when the war was won, humans should not become the very thing they fought against. Kate studied the elven woman carefully. Every instinct said this could be a trap. But humanity was desperate, and desperate people made strange allies. She said she would need to consult with her superiors. Lyra nodded and said to decide quickly. Because the council fleets were coming, and humanity had very little time to prepare. Admiral Kate Morrison made her decision within an hour of meeting Lyra. She brought the elven woman and her dragon to Bastion Prime. The humans who saw Ashkar walking through the corridors stopped and stared. A living dragon was not something anyone expected to see. Lyra met with Kate and Commander Lisa Grant in a secure conference room. She explained what she could offer. Ancient technologies that the Council had suppressed, knowledge of weaknesses in Council ship designs, understanding of how the Council military thought and operated. Most importantly, she offered to help human scientists understand principles that would take them decades to discover on their own. Kate asked why the Council feared this knowledge. Lyra explained that the Council maintained power through technological superiority. They kept certain discoveries classified. They prevented younger species from advancing too quickly. They wanted to ensure that no single species could challenge their authority. By giving humans access to forbidden knowledge, Lyra was breaking rules that had stood for thousands of years. Lisa asked what would happen if the Council discovered Lyra's involvement. The elven woman smiled grimly. She said the Council had been hunting her for 3,000 years. One more crime on her record would not matter much. Kate made the decision to accept Lyra's help. She assigned quarters on Bastion Prime for both Lyra and Ashkar. She gave them access to research facilities. She introduced them to Director Amy Foster and her team. Amy Foster looked exhausted when they met. She had been working non-stop on the special projects, dark circles under her eyes, hands that trembled slightly from too much stimulant medication and too little sleep, but her eyes were sharp and focused. Lyra examined the work Amy had done, the framework of the Ragnarok-class ship, the weapon systems being developed, the power generation technology. She was impressed despite herself. Humans had taken basic principles and pushed them in directions Lyra had never considered. Amy showed Lyra some of the problems they were facing. Power generation that exceeded what their materials could safely handle. Weapons that worked in theory but failed in practice. Shield systems that drained too much energy. Lyra studied each problem carefully. Then she began offering solutions. Not complete answers, but hints and suggestions. Ways to think about the problems differently. Alternative materials and configurations, ancient principles that could be adapted to human technology. Amy listened with growing excitement. She called in her engineering teams. They worked together through the night, human innovation combined with elven knowledge, creating something neither could have achieved alone. Ashkar spent his time exploring the station. He was curious about humanity. He watched them work and fight and plan. He listened to their conversations. He saw how they treated each other under stress. One day, he found a group of young human soldiers in a recreation area. They were playing some kind of game that involved throwing a ball through a hoop. They saw the dragon watching and froze. Ashkar asked if he could watch. The soldiers nervously agreed. They resumed their game, but played badly at first, too aware of the massive predator observing them. Ashkar asked them to explain the rules. One soldier named Beth Crawford stepped forward. She was young and brave enough to overcome her fear. She explained how the game worked, how teams competed, how points were scored. Ashkar found it fascinating. He asked why they played games when war was coming. Beth said that games helped them stay focused, helped them remember what they were fighting for, helped them stay human even in dark times. Ashkar liked that answer. He asked if he could try. The soldiers looked at each other nervously, then Beth handed him the ball. Ashkar took it carefully in his claws. He tried to throw it through the hoop. He missed badly. The soldiers laughed, but not unkindly. They showed him how to aim, how to judge the distance, how to account for the spin. Ashkar tried again and again. Eventually, he made a basket. The soldiers cheered. After that, the dragon visited the recreation area regularly, playing games with humans, learning about their culture, building something that might have been friendship. Meanwhile, the council fleets were advancing into human space. They came slowly this time, scanning carefully for traps, ready for anything, but they found nothing. Human colonies were empty, not destroyed but abandoned. Every structure dismantled, every resource removed, entire worlds stripped bare and returned to wilderness. The council commanders were confused. They had expected desperate defense. They had expected humans to fight for every world. Instead, they found ghost towns and empty stations. Reports went back to the council leadership. Some argued this proved humanity was weak, running and hiding like prey animals. Others were more cautious. They remembered what happened at Refuge. They wondered what humanity was planning. The truth was that humanity was buying time. Every day the council spent chasing empty colonies was another day for Amy Foster's team to work, another day for human forces to prepare, another day for Lyra's knowledge to be integrated into human systems. In our research facility, the first Ragnarok-class ship was taking shape faster than anyone had believed possible. The hull was complete. Power systems were being installed, weapons were being mounted. Amy Foster watched with satisfaction. Then Lyra approached with new information. She said that she had been thinking about the ship's design, that there was a way to make it even more effective. She explained a principle called quantum phase cores. Combined with displacement generators, it would allow the ship to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Not literally, but close enough to confuse enemy sensors and weapons. Amy listened with growing excitement. She called her team together. They worked through the mathematics. It should not be possible. The energy requirements were absurd, but Lyra showed them a workaround, a way to tap into quantum foam itself for power. Human engineers looked at each other with wild grins. They could do this. It would take another 2 weeks, but they could do this. Kate Morrison received daily updates on council fleet movements, 6 grand fleets advancing from multiple directions. They would converge on human core systems within a month. Humanity's conventional forces could not stop them. Everything depended on the Ragnarok-class ships being ready in time. Lisa Grant brought troubling news. Council intelligence had picked up rumors about Lyra's presence. They did not know exactly where she was, but they knew she was involved with humanity somehow. Orders had been issued. Find Lyra, capture, or kill her. Interrogate her to learn what she had given the humans. Kate asked Lyra if she was worried. The elven woman smiled calmly. She said the council had been trying to catch her for 3,000 years. She was not particularly concerned about their latest attempt. Ashkar was less calm. He told Lyra that the council would send their best hunters, the Shadow Fleet specialists trained in assassination and covert operations, beings who had toppled governments and eliminated entire bloodlines. Lyra acknowledged this was true. She said they would deal with the Shadow Fleet when it arrived. For now, there was work to do. In orbit around an uninhabited moon, the first Ragnarok-class ship began its trials. Engineers watched nervously as systems powered up, the quantum phase. Cores hummed to life, displacement generators activated. The ship seemed to flicker as if it was not quite solid, not quite real. Then weapons tests began. The main cannon fired. Space itself seemed to tear. The target asteroid did not explode. It simply ceased to exist, erased from reality. Amy Foster watched with tears running down her face. They had done it, created something that should not be possible. A weapon that the Council had no defense against. Kate Morrison received the test results and allowed herself a moment of hope. They had one ship, 5 more were under construction. With Lyra's help, they would be finished within 3 weeks. It would not be enough to win the war, but it might be enough to survive it. The Council fleets reached the edge of human core systems. They prepared for the final push. They expected desperate resistance. They expected humanity to throw everything they had into a last stand. They were partially right. The human fleet emerged from hiding, but not where the Council expected, not defending worlds or its stations. Instead, they were scattered throughout the Kelos system. 500 ships, each one modified with new technology, each one ready to die if necessary. The Council fleets were 3 times that number. They advanced confidently. Then the human ships scattered, not retreating but dispersing, moving in unpredictable patterns using asteroids as cover. The Council opened fire. Their weapons were powerful and precise, but the human ships danced through the bombardment, dodging and weaving, moving in ways that should not be possible. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons were unlike anything the Council had seen. Particle beams that ignored shields, kinetic rounds that phased through armor, electromagnetic pulses that turned ships into dead hulks. The Council fleets fought back hard. They had numbers and experience. They had superior logistics and training, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. The battle lasted for hours. When it ended, both Council fleets were retreating. They had lost nearly 40% of their ships. Humanity had lost 12 vessels, less than 3%. The footage spread across the galaxy within hours, impossible to suppress, impossible to spin. Young humanity had defeated 2 Council Grand Fleets. Species that had been part of the Council for thousands of years watched in shock. Some felt fear. Others felt something else, something that might have been hope. If humanity could defy the Council, then maybe they could too. On Bastion Prime, Kate Morrison watched the casualty reports. 12 ships lost 340 human lives, each one a person with family and friends and dreams. Kate felt the weight of every death. But she also felt pride. Her people had fought brilliantly. They had won against impossible odds. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not surrender. Lyra watched the battle footage with Ashkar. The dragon asked if she expected this. Lyra shook her head. She said she expected humans to fight well, expected them to be clever and brave, but this level of tactical brilliance surprised her. She told Ashkar that humanity was learning faster than any species she had ever seen. They were adapting to warfare with terrifying speed, taking lessons from each battle and applying them immediately. The dragon asked what would happen next. Lyra said the Council would escalate. They would bring out weapons they had kept secret. They would wake technologies that should stay sleeping. The real war was just beginning, and neither side would be able to stop until one of them was destroyed. Kate Morrison called a meeting with her senior staff. She told them about the remaining Council fleets, 4 grand fleets still advancing, plus whatever reserves the Council could call up. Humanity's 500 ships were damaged and depleted. The Ragnarok would help, but one ship could not win the war alone. Then Amy Foster entered with news. The other 5 Ragnarok-class ships would be ready within 2 weeks, not 3 weeks as originally estimated. Lyra's help had accelerated production beyond all projections. Kate felt hope surge through her. 6 ships of unimaginable power against 4 Council Grand Fleets. The odds were still against humanity, but for the first time since the war began, the odds were not impossible. She gave orders to pull back all forces, consolidate around the core systems, prepare for the decisive battle. Everything humanity had built, everything they had fought for, everything they were, would be decided in one massive engagement. Either they would win their freedom, or they would be destroyed. There was no middle ground, no room for compromise, only victory or extinction. Lisa Grant asked Kate if she was afraid. The Admiral admitted honestly that she was terrified, but she said that fear was useful. Fear kept you sharp. Fear reminded you what was at stake. The trick was not to let fear control you. Kate looked out at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, Council fleets were coming to crush humanity, coming to teach them a lesson about defying authority. But humanity had lessons of their own to teach, lessons about determination, about sacrifice, about what happens when you push a species too far. Kate smiled grimly. Let them come. Humanity was ready. The Council leadership met in emergency session for the 3rd time in as many weeks. The mood in the chamber was dark and angry. 2 grand fleets defeated by a species barely 50 years into space travel. It was unthinkable, impossible, humiliating. The Zekthari ambassador demanded answers. How did humans have technology superior to Council designs? Who was helping them? Where did they get these weapons? Council intelligence reported that they had leads. References to an ancient rogue named Lyra, a dragon-bonded individual who had evaded capture for millennia. Reports placed her in human space. The Council leader gave the order. Send the Shadow Fleet. Find Lyra and eliminate her. Learn what she had given the humans. Destroy any advantage she had provided. The Shadow Fleet was the Council's secret weapon. 20 ships crewed by the finest special operations soldiers in the galaxy, beings trained to infiltrate and assassinate, to topple governments and eliminate threats. They had never failed a mission. They departed within hours. Their target was Bastion Prime. 3 days later, the Shadow Fleet approached human space. They moved in full stealth mode. Every system designed to hide them from detection technology that had been refined over thousands of years. They were confident, arrogant even. They had eliminated threats more dangerous than one elven woman and her dragon. But the human defensive perimeter had changed. Director Amy Foster's teams had created something new. Millions of automated drones, each one smaller than a human hand, each one equipped with sensors and weapons. They floated through space like a cloud of metal insects. The drones detected the Shadow Fleet while it was still light years away. They tracked the Council ships as they advanced. They waited patiently. When the Shadow Fleet reached what they thought was striking distance, the drones attacked millions of tiny machines swarming. Individually, they were harmless. Together, they were devastating. The Shadow Fleet tried to fight back, but stealth ships were designed for infiltration, not combat. Their weapons were precise and deadly against single targets. Against millions of small, fast-moving drones, they were useless. 19 ships were destroyed within minutes. The 20th managed to broadcast an emergency surrender. Its hull breached in dozens of places. Its crew desperate and defeated, Admiral Kate Morrison went, personally, to receive the survivors, 15 beings from 7 different species. They stood in the brig of the Defiance looking shocked. Kate studied them through the containment field. She told them they fought well. Their stealth technology was impressive, but they made a critical mistake. The team leader was a Vornash named Kethzar. It flickered with confusion and asked what mistake. Kate smiled coldly. She told them that humanity had been tracking Council communications for months, breaking their encryption, reading their classified messages. The Council had no operational security anymore. Not since the day humans walked out of the Council chambers. The prisoners reacted with disbelief and horror. Kethzar said it was impossible. Council encryption was mathematically unbreakable. Kate corrected him. She said it was unbreakable by Council standards. But humans had always been good at breaking things that were supposed to be unbreakable. Lyra watched the interrogation feeds with interest. She sat in her quarters aboard Bastion Prime, with Ashkar in his smaller form beside her. The dragon asked if she expected the Shadow Fleet. Lyra said she was surprised they took so long. The Council was predictable in some ways. When conventional methods failed, they always turned to covert operations. Commander Lisa Grant entered with new intelligence. The prisoners were confirming what humanity suspected. The Council was planning total war. Not just military conquest, but complete occupation. They wanted to dismantle humanity as a species, scatter their population, forbid their language, erase their culture, make them an example that would terrify other species for thousands of years. Lyra nodded slowly. She told Lisa that this was standard Council procedure. When a subject species became too troublesome, they were eliminated as a political entity. She had seen it happen before. Entire civilizations reduced to scattered refugees, their histories forgotten, their contributions erased. Lisa asked if Lyra thought humanity could prevent this fate. The elven woman looked at the young commander carefully. She said that humanity had already done something no other species had managed. They had defied the Council and survived. They had won battles against superior forces. They had inspired other species to question Council authority. But the hardest part was still ahead. The Council had 4 grand fleets remaining, plus reserves that could be called up even with the Ragnarok-class ships. Humanity was outnumbered. The mathematics were brutal. Lyra told Lisa that victory would require more than weapons and ships. It would require breaking the Council's will to fight, making them understand that destroying humanity would cost more than they were willing to pay. Lisa asked how to do that. Lyra smiled grimly. She said humanity was already doing it. Every victory made the Council look weaker. Every defeat cost them credibility. Every day the war continued, more species questioned their authority. The cracks in Council power were spreading. In a research facility hidden deep in an asteroid, Amy Foster supervised the final work on the Ragnarok-class ships. 5 massive vessels in various stages of completion, engineers and technicians worked around the clock. Automated systems fabricated components faster than human hands could assemble them. Amy moved between workstations, offering encouragement and solving problems. She had not slept properly in weeks, but she could rest when the ships were finished. Not before Lyra visited the facility regularly, she watched human workers push themselves beyond normal limits. She offered suggestions when asked, helped solve technical problems that stumped even the best human engineers. One day, she found a young technician named Beth Crawford, crying in a quiet corner. Beth was exhausted and overwhelmed. She said she did not know if she could keep working at this pace. Lyra sat down beside her. She told Beth a story about a species she had known thousands of years ago. They were brilliant and kind. They created beautiful art and profound philosophy. But when the Council came and demanded submission, they surrendered without a fight. They thought cooperation would save them. It did not. The Council absorbed them slowly over generations, changed their culture, rewrote their history. Within 500 years, they ceased to exist as a distinct people. Lyra looked at Beth and said that humanity was different. Humans fought even when fighting seemed hopeless. They sacrificed everything rather than surrender. That spirit was worth preserving, worth dying for if necessary. Beth wiped her eyes and nodded. She stood up and went back to work. Lyra watched her go and felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Hope. Not for victory necessarily, but hope that some things in the universe were worth the cost of defending them. Ashkar found the elven woman later. He asked if she was becoming too attached to humanity. Lyra admitted that perhaps she was. She said that humans reminded her of what Her own people had been like long ago, before they became cautious and conservative, before they learned to fear change. Humans still had that fire, that willingness to risk everything for a dream. The dragon asked, what would happen if humanity won? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. She said honestly that she did not know humans might become heroes or monsters. They might build something better or something worse than the Council, but at least they would have the choice, and choice was the most precious thing in the universe. Meanwhile, the 4 remaining Council Grand Fleets assembled, over 4,000 ships supported by countless auxiliaries. The largest concentration of military power in galactic history, Grand Admiral Zethmora commanded from her flagship, the Eternal Judgment. She stood on the bridge and surveyed her forces with satisfaction. The humans had won minor victories through tricks and traps. But this time, there would be no tricks. This time, the Council would advance with overwhelming force. This time, humanity would learn the price of defiance. She gave the order to advance. The armada moved toward human space like a storm. But something unexpected happened. 3 Council member species announced their withdrawal from the war. Then 5 more. Then a dozen smaller species who had been forced to contribute ships and resources. Species who had watched humanity fight and been inspired. They sent messages to the Council leadership. They said the war with humanity was unjust. They said the Council had overstepped its authority. They said they would no longer participate. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. The Zekthari ambassador raged about betrayal. The Vornash delegate spoke of inspiring rebellion. Other ambassadors argued and shouted, but the damage was done. The cracks in Council authority that Lyra had predicted were becoming canyons. Species across the galaxy were asking dangerous questions. If humanity could defy the Council, why could not they? If humans could win battles, what did that say about Council military power? If the Council could be wrong about humanity, what else were they wrong about? Kate Morrison received reports of the Council fractures with cautious optimism. This was good news. But it also made the Council more desperate, more willing to use extreme measures, more dangerous. She called a meeting with her senior staff and Lyra. They discussed strategy for the coming battle. The 4 Council Grand Fleets would arrive within days. Humanity had 6 Ragnarok-class ships. And what remained of their conventional fleet? Perhaps 300 vessels total against 4,000. Even with superior technology, the numbers were daunting. Lyra spoke carefully. She said that winning this battle would require more than firepower. It would require psychology. The Council expected humanity to defend their core worlds, to fight desperately to protect Earth and the inner colonies. Lyra suggested doing the opposite. Draw the Council fleet deep into human space. Make them chase shadows, then hit them from unexpected angles. Break their formations, destroy their logistics, make them question every decision. Kate listened carefully. She asked her staff what they thought. Commander Lisa Grant said, the strategy was risky. If something went wrong, humanity would lose everything. But Director Amy Foster said that playing it safe would lose the war just as surely. They had to take risks. Admiral Kate Morrison made the decision they would use Lyra's strategy. All civilian populations would be evacuated from the inner systems. All resources would be moved. Earth itself would be abandoned temporarily. The Council could have empty worlds while humanity prepared the trap. Lisa asked Kate if she was sure. The Admiral said no. She was not sure at all, but she was committed. That would have to be enough. Lyra received a message on her private communication channel, an old frequency that few beings in the galaxy still knew. The message was from the other dragon-bonded pairs, the 6 who had survived the Council's persecution. They were calling a conclave, a meeting to decide what to do about the human war. Lyra told Kate that she needed to leave for a short time. She had old debts to settle, old friends to convince Kate. Asked how long, Lyra said a week, perhaps 2. But when she returned, she would bring allies, or at least ensure humanity did not have additional enemies. Kate agreed. She told Lyra that humanity would hold the line until then. Lyra and Ashkar departed on the Whisper of Stars. The ship slipped into hyperspace. Behind them, Bastion Prime continued preparations for the greatest battle in human history. Ahead of them, the Conclave waited. A meeting that would determine whether the Dragon-Bonded would finally emerge from hiding, or whether they would remain in the shadows for another 1,000 years. Ashkar asked Lyra what she would say to the others. The elven woman said she would tell them the truth, that the Council had become what they always feared, that humanity was fighting for, the same freedom the Dragon-Bonded had lost, that this was their chance to finally strike back at the system that had hunted them for millennia. The dragon rumbled thoughtfully. He said the others would be afraid that helping humanity would make them targets again, afraid that they would be hunted and killed. Lyra acknowledged this was true, but she said that hiding forever was not living. It was just existing. And after 3,000 years of existing, she was ready to live again. Even if it meant dying in the process, the ship traveled through hyperspace toward the meeting point. Behind them, the galaxy prepared for war, the outcome uncertain. The stakes, absolute, victory or extinction, freedom or slavery. There was no middle ground anymore. The Conclave met in a station older than most civilizations. It floated in the space between stars, where no one would think to look. 6 dragon-bonded pairs had answered the call. Ancient beings and their even more ancient companions, Lyra and Ashkar, arrived last. Their ship docked with the station, and they entered the central chamber. The space was vast and filled with crystalline structures. Dragons in their true forms surrounded the center, massive beings of scales and wings and fire. Their bonded companions stood beside them, mostly elves, though Lyra saw 2 ancient humans among them, survivors from Earth's mythical age when dragons and humans lived together. Kyle spoke first. He was bonded to the silver dragon, Veyrosh. His voice carried authority and anger. He said that Lyra had broken the silence. For 3,000 years they had hidden from council persecution, and now she emerged to help their newest enemy. Had she lost her mind? Lyra walked to the center of the chamber with Ashkar at her side. She said she had not lost her mind. She had found her purpose again. The council had become everything they feared. They did not maintain peace, but enforced stagnation. They did not protect the weak, but exploited them. Humanity's rebellion was not chaos, but justice. Elena spoke next. She was one of the ancient humans. Her dragon, Cinder, glowed with inner fire. Elena asked what justice looked like when billions would die, when worlds would burn, when the galaxy would be consumed by war. Lyra said that billions already suffered under council rule, entire species enslaved in everything but name, cultures erased, innovation crushed. The council had created a graveyard of potential and called it paradise. The dragons rumbled among themselves, a sound like mountains, shifting. Finally, Veyrosh spoke with a voice like grinding stone. He asked what Lyra wanted from them. Why call this conclave after so long? Lyra said simply that she wanted them to fight. Not for humanity specifically, but against the system that hunted them. The council would never stop, never forgive, never change. This was their chance to end the persecution forever. Kale argued that fighting would only bring more hunting, more death. The council would never allow dragon-bonded to exist in peace. Ashkar laughed, a sound that rolled through the chamber like thunder. He said the council already did not allow them peace. They had been hiding for 3,000 years, living in fear, watching from shadows. Was that the life they wanted, or did they want to actually live before they died? The debate raged for hours. Some argued for continued neutrality. Others suggested fleeing to the galactic rim, abandoning the central worlds entirely. But slowly a consensus emerged. They would not fight for humanity specifically, but they would fight against the council. and in practice that was the same thing. Lyra felt relief wash over her. She told them about the coming battle, about the four council grand fleets, about humanity's desperate plan. She asked if they would join her. The six pairs looked at each other. Then one by one they agreed. They would fight. After 3,000 years of hiding, they would emerge. They would remind the galaxy what dragon-bonded pairs could do. Meanwhile, in human space, the final preparations were complete. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center of Bastion Prime. Around her staff worked at their stations. Screens showed the Council Armada. Approaching over 4,000 ships moving in perfect formation, Kate felt fear and determination in equal measure. Commander Lisa Grant approached with final status reports. All civilian populations evacuated from inner systems. All resources moved to secure locations. The 6 Ragnarok-class ships were in position. The remaining conventional fleet was ready. They had done everything possible. Now they would see if it was enough. The Council Armada entered human space like a tidal wave. Grand Admiral Zethmora commanded from her flagship. She expected desperate resistance. Maybe another suicide trap. Possibly guerrilla attacks. What she found was emptiness. Human colonies abandoned, stations powered down. No defensive fleets, no resistance at all. Her tactical officers reported finding nothing. Zethmora was suspicious. This had to be another human trick. She ordered the fleet to advance slowly. Scanning carefully for traps, they found none. The inner systems were empty. Earth itself showed no military presence. Its orbital defenses were offline. The planet appeared defenseless. Zethmora allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had finally realized they could not win. They had abandoned their worlds and fled. Victory was assured. Then the trap sprang. The 6 Ragnarok-class ships emerged from hiding. They had been waiting in the shadow of a gas giant, powered down and invisible. Now they activated and moved to attack positions. Zethmora saw them on her tactical display and felt her first moment of doubt. The ships were enormous, each one 10 kilometers long. They did not look like any vessel in Council databases. Then they opened fire. Reality itself seemed to tear. The Ragnarok weapons did not just destroy ships. They erased them from existence. Council vessels ceased to be. No explosions, no debris, just empty space where ships had been. The Council fleet tried to respond. 4,000 ships concentrated fire on the Ragnarok vessels, but the human ships flickered. Existing in multiple places simultaneously, most weapons passed through empty space. Those that hit were absorbed by shields that should not be possible. Then the conventional human fleet attacked from unexpected angles. 300 ships striking at Council formations, breaking their perfect order, creating chaos. And through the chaos came 7 dragons. Lyra and Ashkar led them, massive beings diving into Council formations. Their breath melted hulls. Their claws tore through armor. Their presence caused sensor systems to malfunction. Ashkar roared across all frequencies. He said the Council had hunted them, declared them extinct. Now they would face the fury of those who survived. The Council fleet began to break. Ships scattered, trying to avoid the dragons. Captains panicked and fired at anything that moved, sometimes hitting their own allies. The battle devolved from organized military operation into desperate chaos. Grand Admiral Zethmora watched her perfect formations collapse. She tried to restore order, tried to rally her commanders. But fear was spreading through her fleet faster than her orders could travel. Then she made a decision that would define her legacy. She activated a weapon the Council had kept secret for 5,000 years. A weapon derived from precursor technology. A weapon that could tear open reality itself. She told her bridge crew to prepare the dimensional gateway. If she could not have victory, then no one would. Reality began to fold around her flagship, space itself warping, dimensional boundaries weakening. Lyra felt the distortion immediately. She understood what was happening. She told Kate over the communication channel that Zethmora was attempting to open a gateway to null space, a dimension where physical laws did not apply. If she succeeded, she would destroy everything within 10 light years, including her own fleet, including Earth, including all of them. Ashkar spread his wings. He said then they must stop her. The 7 dragon-bonded pairs converged on the Council flagship. Their combined power created a counterfield ancient magic mixed with quantum physics. Reality screamed as incompatible forces collided. Space itself cracked like glass. The stress was visible to the naked eye. In that moment, as the galaxy teetered on the edge of annihilation, something unexpected happened. The Council fleet mutinied captains from dozens of species watched their admiral prepare to commit genocide. They made a choice. They powered down weapons. They refused orders. They broadcast surrender signals. One captain spoke on all channels. He said enough. They had joined the Council to protect civilization, not destroy it. The war was over. Zethmora raged. She tried to activate the weapon alone, but her own crew restrained her security officers who chose conscience over obedience. The dimensional gateway collapsed. The danger passed. Silence fell over the battlefield. Kate Morrison stood in the command center and felt tears streaming down her face. They had won against impossible odds. Humanity had won. Lisa Grant asked what they should do now. Kate said they would accept the surrender. They would treat prisoners with dignity. They would show the galaxy that humanity could be merciful in victory. The treaty negotiations took place on Earth, in the rebuilt United Nations building. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered. The Council leadership came defeated and humbled. They agreed to complete restructuring. Humanity would have equal representation. All species would have the right to self-governance. The ancient laws restricting technology and culture were abolished. The new agreement was not perfect. It would not last forever, but it was a start. Lyra stood in an observation room watching diplomats argue. Ashkar lounged beside her in his smaller form. The dragon said she had done it, changed the galaxy. Lyra corrected him. They had all done it. The 7 dragon-bonded pairs. Humanity. Even the Council species who chose conscience over orders. Kate Morrison joined them, looking exhausted but satisfied. She asked Lyra what the historians would call this period. The elven woman said she knew what it should be called: the Awakening. Because for the first time in millennia, the galaxy was truly awake. Aware that change was possible, that tyranny could be challenged, that the old ways were not the only ways. Kate asked what Lyra would do now. The 7 had been offered official status and protections. Lyra said she would stay for a while, make sure humanity did not become what they fought against, that they did not mistake power for wisdom. Kate asked what would happen if humanity did. Lyra said seriously that they would stop them. Just like they stopped the Council. That was their purpose as dragon-bonded, to be the check on authority. The reminder that no species had the right to dominate all others. Ashkar rumbled in agreement. He said the galaxy needed balance. Not perfect peace, but dynamic equilibrium, chaos and order in eternal dance. Kate looked out at Earth below, blue and beautiful and free. She said they came so close to losing everything. Lyra replied that they had not lost. They had gambled everything on a principle, that freedom mattered more than safety, that self-determination was worth any price. The galaxy would remember. Kate asked for how long. Lyra laughed. She said until the next young species emerged and needed to learn the same lesson. But that would not be for a while. Maybe 1,000 years or more, Kate should enjoy the peace she earned. As they stood, watching a galaxy transformed by courage and sacrifice, Lyra felt something she had not experienced in 3,000 years: hope. The future was uncertain. Humanity might rise to greatness or fall to corruption. The reformed council might succeed or collapse into chaos. The dragon-bonded might remain vigilant or fade back into legend. But for this moment, watching species work together and argue together and build together, Lyra believed the galaxy had learned that no one species could rule forever, that change, though painful, was necessary, that sometimes the youngest voices had the most important things to say. Ashkar nudged her gently. He said it was time to go. The ceremony was about to begin. Below on Earth's surface, a monument was being unveiled, a statue of a human soldier and an elven warrior standing back to back, a dragon coiled protectively around them. The inscription read that they stood together when all seemed lost. Let us never forget the price of freedom. Lyra smiled. She told Ashkar not to keep them waiting. The galaxy had trembled when humanity ended diplomatic contact. It had shaken when they went to war. It had transformed when they won. Now came the hardest part. Building something worth protecting. But that was a challenge. Humanity seemed uniquely suited for. After all they had reached for the stars, despite knowing the darkness between them, they had fought impossible odds and prevailed. They had changed the galaxy itself. What was building a better future compared to that? 50 years passed. A young human girl named Sophie stood in the archives of Earth. She stared at holographic displays of the war. She watched footage of Lyra and Ashkar, fighting alongside human ships, of the 7 dragons dancing through battle, of the moment when the council fleet surrendered. She asked her grandfather if it really happened like that. The old admiral smiled. He said more or less. Reality was messier, of course. More fear and uncertainty. More luck than anyone liked to admit. Sophie asked if the dragons were still out there. The admiral said somewhere. They came and went, kept watch. Made sure humanity remembered that power came with responsibility. Sophie asked if there would be another war someday. The admiral said honestly, maybe the galaxy was vast and full of different ideas, but if there was, humanity would remember what they learned, that strength alone did not win wars, that allies mattered, that courage to stand for what was right was the greatest weapon. Sophie looked at the hologram of Lyra, her face frozen mid-battle, fierce and joyful. Sophie said she wanted to be like her when she grew up. The admiral laughed. He told her to study hard, stay curious, never accept, because I said so. As an answer, remember that the galaxy was full of wonders if you were brave enough to reach for them. As they left the archives, neither noticed the slender figure in the shadows. Lyra smiled and vanished like morning mist. Ashkar's presence a whisper beside her. The galaxy had learned its lesson, but lessons had to be taught again to each new generation. She would be there, watching and waiting, ready to teach when the time came. After all, she had all the time in the world, and the galaxy would always need guardians who remembered that freedom was never free, that peace was always won through sacrifice, that sometimes the smallest spark could light the greatest fire. The story of humanity's war became legend. The legend became myth. The myth became a reminder echoing through centuries. Never corner an apex predator. Never underestimate those who have nothing left to lose. Never forget that the galaxy belongs to those brave enough to shape it. Somewhere in the space between stars, a dragon roared in agreement, and the galaxy listened.